we're here. What can you tell us about all this stuff?
Oh, this? Well, how about if I show you?
Okay.
Could you just say your name into this microphone?
Tatiana Ali.
Watch this.
Tatiana Ali. Tatiana Ali. Tatiana Ali.
Tatiana Ali. Tatiana Ali.
Tatiana,
As returning guest, Mr. Christ on a Bike himself, John Ashdown. But first, the news. After 27 studio albums, 3 soundtrack albums, 1 live album, 12 compilation albums, 79 singles, and 44 music videos, what format of musical mischief haven't the Mael brothers blessed us with? Lo, these past, 59 years. Kind of insane to hear, but October 3rd, 2025 finally saw the release of Sparks' very first EP. That's extended play for those who missed the days of vinyl or physical media of any kind at all. Comprised of 4 tracks that didn't make the cut for Sparks' full-length effort Mad, released earlier in 2025, this fun-sized release has been bestowed the title of, get ready for it, Matter. Superlatives are the absolute greatest. Released in tandem with brand new single and music video Porcupine, here's what reviewer Andrew Neal had to say about it over there at silentradio.co.uk. What is apparent from lead single Porcupine is that these are not a bunch of scruffy extras, but songs so good it would be unjustifiable to leave them unreleased. The lyrics celebrates a prickly character, and the tune is notable for Ron Mael's hypnotic, whirling keyboards acting as a counterpoint to Brother Russell's staccato delivery, alongside big riffs and pounding drum beats. These 4 songs show there is plenty left in the well, and that Sparks are madder than ever. Released on Transgressive Records, go pick it up now. Well, this is the part of the show that never ever gets any easier. I mentioned many months ago on this show that Sal Maida, bassman and master of the Bottomless Bottom End on 1976's Big Beat, had sadly departed our material world. And now it pains me very, very deeply to report that Sal's partner in crime in the rhythm section, Mr. Hilly, a.k.a. Hilly Boy Michaels, has tragically left us as well. In his final months and years, Hilly kept an eye on his legacy as he rummaged through his prodigious vault of unreleased recordings over the decades. His frequent collaborator and true blue Hilly fan himself, Bill Hall, has curated and maintained Hilly's official online presence, along with Sparks superfan Thomas Ferranti. The work that they've done and continue to do to preserve all of Hilly's music, old, new, familiar, and undiscovered, is much, much appreciated by this here Hilly Boy enthusiast. Of course, as you know, Hilly was kind enough to make not 1 but 3 appearances on this very podcast, as well as on Monte Mallin's Sparks YouTube channel. Not sure what I can add to what I've already said in the past about Hilly and his absolutely supernatural talent. He genuinely seemed like a great guy, and I was truly hoping to meet him in person one day. Godspeed, my U.S. mail. Calling all angels.
I guess you changed, you lost affection. The words came out your mouth like knives. Yes, they did.
So, imagine it's 1984. You are pop culture personified, and you are currently suffering from a severe case of cognitive dissonance. On one hand, you're told it's morning in America. Everything is sunny, the Olympics are coming to Los Angeles, and a bunch of college kids in Silicon Valley have just introduced a beige box called the Macintosh. that promises to liberate your mind from gray Orwellian drudge, the sheer volume of Aquanet being sprayed in every suburban bathroom from here to New Jersey. But if you are Ron and Russell Mael, 1984 feels a little bit different. It feels like the day after a very successful party you're not entirely sure you wanted to attend in the first place. Sparks had just spent 1983 being LA's favorite sons. They'd finally cracked the American code with Jane Wiedlin on Cool Places. They were KROQ, K-Rock's royalty. They were the guys recording those quirky Magic Man radio spots. They were playing the Showcase Theater at Magic Mountain for rows of kids who thought the song Mickey Mouse was a literal tribute to a cartoon rodent rather than a piece of art pop subversion. But as they walked into Oasis Studios in Los Angeles to record their 13th album, Pulling Rabbits Out of a Hat, the sun was starting to feel a little too bright. There's a certain kind of fatigue that sets in when you've been a pioneer for 15 years and you finally hit the charts with a song about breezy, cool places. You start to wonder, what now? Do we keep doing the cartoon thing? Do we grow beards to try to sound like the band? Or do we do what Sparks always does? Or does best? Do we double down on artifice, the artificial? And that's when they saw it. Sitting in the studio like a beige monolith from a Kubrick film, the Fairlight CMI. History lesson. Now, it bears recalling that the most significant musical revolution of the 20th century did not start in a high-tech lab in Tokyo or a sleek studio in London. It started in 1971 in a suburban backyard in Sydney, Australia. It was the brainchild of a teenager named Kim Ryrie, who had a very specific, very obsessive frustration. Ryrie was a synth enthusiast. He even started up a magazine called Electronics Today International. And he was bored. He was tired of the bleeps and the bloops of the early 70s. He wanted a synthesizer that didn't just sound like a circuit board having a seizure. He wanted a machine that could replicate the majesty of a real physical instrument. He wanted the grain of a cello, the thwack of a real snare, the chime of a real bell. He teamed up with a high school classmate, an electronics whiz named Peter Vogel, and they formed a home business called Fairlight, named after the hydrofoil ferry that buzzed past Ryrie's grandmother's house in Sydney Harbor. For the next few years, they lived in a world of soldering irons, trying to build something they called the Quasar M8. The Quasar, mate. The Quasar M8 was, by all accounts, a magnificent disaster. It was huge, it was expensive, and it sounded, according to Vogel, remarkably like a dying refrigerator. They were trying to build a machine that could synthesize the complexity of a natural sound from scratch using something called additive harmonic synthesis. They were trying to stack digital sine waves on top of each other until they became a violin. But the math was too heavy for the tech of the 70s. The computer simply could not keep up with the beauty of a real-world vibration. And then, in 1978, they had a eureka moment that would change the history of human hearing. They realized they were working too hard. Instead of trying to create a sound, why not just record one? Why not take a tiny digital snapshot of a real-world noise and loop that sucker? They called it sampling. And the machine that they built to do it was the Fairlight CMI. CMI standing for Computer Musical Instrument. When they finally got it to work, Vogel said it sounded remarkably like a piano. By today's standards, it was a pretty awful piano sound, but at the time, it was a million times more real than anything a Moog or an ARP had ever churned out. Ironically, Ryrie later admitted that they felt like they were cheating. They didn't feel proud of it at first. They thought using real-life sounds was a lazy shortcut. Little did they know. They had just invented the next 40 years of pop music. The Fairlight was the ultimate 80s power move, taking a dog bark, a breaking glass, and a car door and telling them they were now part of a pop song. So, let's talk about that tech. For the gearheads and the curious, I'm going to explain what a musician like Russell Mael was actually doing when he sat down at a Fairlight in 1984. The Fairlight CMI didn't look like an instrument, it looked like a computer terminal for a mid-tier accounting firm. And it had a monochrome green and black monitor, an alphanumeric keyboard, and two 8-inch floppy disk drives that clicked and whirred like they were chewing on your best ideas. It had 208 kilobytes of RAM. To put that in perspective, a single low-quality selfie on your phone today would take up more memory than the entire operating system of the machine that recorded pulling rabbits out of a hat. But the magic part, the thing that gave the Fairlight its physical soul, was the light pen. This wasn't a mouse, it was a wand. Imagine being Russell Mael, a man who appreciates the theatricality of the stare, and now he has a laser pointer that allows him to manipulate reality. You could take this pen, touch the green screen, and literally draw the sound wave. You could draw a jagged sawtooth line to make a sound sharper, or you could round the corners to play it smoother. You could see the sound as a 3D landscape on page D, which was the display page. It was the first time in history that a musician could look at a sound and say, I don't like that peak near the end, and literally erase it with a pen. It was digital surgery. It was Harry Potter meets Microsoft Excel. In 1984, the magic in music stopped being about what was in your hands and started being about what was in your RAM. But the real game changer, the thing that Ron and Russell clearly obsessed over, was Page R. Page R stood for Real-Time Composer, but it was actually the world's first visual grid sequencer. Before Page R, if you wanted a drum beat, you hired a drummer. You dealt with their ego, their timing, their tendency to play too loud. But Page R turned music into a vertical spreadsheet. You place a hit on a grid, and the Fairlight would trigger that sample with 100% mathematical, robotic precision. Page R wasn't just a sequencer. It was a spreadsheet for people who thought eighth notes were a tax write-off. As you can imagine, the traditionalists were horrified. This wasn't just a new keyboard, this was an existential threat. In January of 1982, the Musicians' Union in the UK actually passed an official motion for an outright ban on synthesizers. The catalyst, believe it or not, was Barry Manilow. When Manilow toured the UK in early '82, he used synthesizers to replicate the sound of a massive big band orchestra. The Union went into a full-blown panic. They called the Fairlight and its cousins digital scabs. They feared a world where the orchestra pits of the West End would be filled with one guy in a turtleneck holding a light pen instead of 35 people with violins and trumpets who all needed chairs and insurance and union-mandated coffee breaks. The Union even argued that this technology was lowering the standards of music production and consumption. They feared a world of canned music where the human mistake, the thing that gives music its soul, in the eyes of some, many even, was being erased by 8-bit digital grit. They weren't entirely wrong to be scared. The Fairlight was an orchestra in a box. It allowed people like Peter Gabriel to smash milk bottles and turn them into a percussion section. It allowed Kate Bush to spend months painting sounds into a machine until she had the ghostly, unearthly textures of the dreaming. The Fairlight was the first instrument that didn't care if you'd spent 10,000 hours practicing your scales as long as you had $10,000 for the down payment. When Sparks walked into Oasis Studios to record Pulling Rabbits, they weren't alone. They were joined by producer Ian Little. Now, Little was the quintessential new school producer of the era. He had just come off the massive success of Duran Duran's 7 and the Ragged Tiger and the remix of the Re-Flex. He was a man who lived and breathed the Fairlight. Little's approach was purely architectural. He wasn't there to capture a vibe or performance. He was there to build a digital fortress. In interviews, Little has noted that the recording of Pulling Rabbits was an exercise in precision. They weren't using the Fairlight as a secondary tool, they were using it as the foundation. One of the most hardcore factual nuggets from these sessions involves the way they treated the drums. Instead of miking up a kit, Little and Ron spent hours turning samples on the Fairlight. They were using the Fairlight Series 2X, which had a slightly higher fidelity than the Series 1, but still retained that crunchy 8-bit quality. Little has recounted that the session was less about playing and more about inputting. He brought in a suite of gear that defined the 1984 sound. The Roland Jupiter 8 for those thick, brassy leads, and the brand new Yamaha DX7 for those crystalline digital plucks that sound like a glass piano. I actually used to own the Yamaha DX7, and I miss it very much. It was the Fairlight that tied everything together. Little utilized the machine's ability to layer sounds, taking a real snare hit, layering it with a digital thwack, and then using page R to make sure it hit exactly on the 2 and the 4 without a single millisecond of human variation. Sparks didn't sell their souls to the machine, they just leased them out for a very catchy, very robotic 4/4 beat. Now, let's address the elephant in the room, or if you prefer, the rabbit in the hat. There is a school of thought among some Sparks historians, good friend of the podcast, Mr. Rude Swart, among those, that Pulling Rabbits Out of a Hat represents a moment where the males were struggling for inspiration. If you look at the title, it's the ultimate admission of the struggle. A magician pulls a rabbit out of a hat when he needs a trick to distract you from the fact that there's no actual magic. Was Ron Mael using the Fairlight as a distraction? In 1984, the males felt like they were in a race. They were signed to Atlantic, they had the pressure to follow up the success of In Outer Space and the 2 records before that, and they were living in an LA that was becoming increasingly synthetic. Ron Mael, the classically trained pianist, wasn't playing to the room anymore. He was programming to the grid. He was taking these digital rabbits, these 8-bit samples, and pulling them out of the floppy disks to dazzle a public that was increasingly obsessed with the shiny and the new. The sound of Pulling Rabbits is the sound of that fatigue. It's thinner, it's stiff, but it's also undeniably Sparks. Because who else would take a $30,000 computer and use it to write a song about pretending to be drunk? Ron and Russell have always lived in the uncanny valley, that creepy place where something looks human but isn't quite right. Before the Fairlight, they had to do that with Ron's stare and mustache. In 1984, he finally had a machine that could do it with him. If Brian Eno is the architect of the digital age, Ron Mael's the guy who moved in and immediately started painting the walls in sarcastic neon. This brings us to the existential question of our time. Is AI music just the inevitable conclusion of the road the Fairlight started us on? Think about what we're doing today. We're using machines that have sampled the entire history of human emotion, and we can now regurgitate that with 100% precision. We've reached the point where the technology isn't just a collaborator, it's the whole band. The technology aspect is close to 100% of the final product. In 1984, the Fairlight was a curio used by elites like Peter Gabriel, Ryuichi Sakamoto, and the Maels. Today, that same power is in a free app on your phone. We've democratized music making to the point where the musician is an optional extra. We have reached the end of the rehearsal space. Now here's the difference. AI doesn't have a sense of irony. AI can mimic a Fairlight sample, but it can't mimic the snark of Ron and Russell Mael. It can't understand why it's funny to use the most expensive computer in the world to write a song about social anxiety. The Fairlight era of Sparks works because it's a human using a machine to comment on the machinery of humans. AI is just a machine commenting on its own data. As we listen to the tracks today on the album, ask yourself, are you listening to a band? Or are you listening to a very sophisticated set of instructions? Maybe, as importantly, does it matter? Pulling rabbits out of a hat might not have the warmth of Sparks' 70s work, nor the grit of their early 80s work, or even some of their 21st century work. But it remains a fascinating document of the band trying to navigate the digital deep freeze. They were taking the rock of the 80s and vacuum sealing it for posterity. So, grab your light pen, clear your cache, let's dive into the digital soul of the Mael brothers. In 1984, the rabbit wasn't real, but the trick was totally radical. Tonight, we are finally discussing, I don't know why I've pushed it back so long. I've been looking forward to it so much. Sparks is, depending on how you count them, 13th, I think, album.
Sounds about
depends on how
right.
you count them. 1984's Pulling Rabbits Out of a Hat. Okay.
And even though this is an audio recording, this is an OG copy of it. Pulled it out for you,
No,
John.
this could go on YouTube.
Yeah, I've got the same. This is the import version because this is the only Sparks album never released in the UK.
Right.
Never
My mom drove me to the National
Yeah.
Record Mart in Oakland, Pennsylvania to pick up this album.
This
Remember the day like it was yesterday.
My one still has the polythene and the wrapping.
Yeah.
And in the corner here, the little yellow Virgin Megastore with the price £6.49, which in 1984 was probably about $7.50, something like that. An extra pound because it was an import.
Excellent.
And so you bought that in 1994, is that right, John?
1984.
No, you bought it in 1984.
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah,
so
yeah.
the year it came out. So at that time, you were not only already a Sparks fan, but you knew that the album was out and that you had to import it.
Yeah. What happened was the New Musical Express in the UK mentioned that Sparks were bringing out a new album, but potentially it was not likely to be released in the UK. My local record shop where I lived in Gillingham in Kent, which is south of London, I asked them there and they said, no, we probably wouldn't be able to get hold of it. And it is definitely not listed for release. So I popped along to Virgin Megastore in Oxford Street. So was one of the biggest record stores in the country. I worked just up the road, went in there a couple of times. The guy didn't really know what I was talking about because Sparks really weren't on the radar back in the 80s. Finally found a guy who said, yeah, we'll get it in an import sometime this week. By the end of the week, there it was in the import rack, just one copy.
I'm so glad you're the one that got it. Oh, and by the way, Christian, just because I know of your love of Sparks soundtrack music, I also pulled out the original Get Crazy 45.
Oh, you got a great Get Crazy 45.
Just for you, I pulled it out. I said, oh, Christian will like that.
Well, you've got me something to look forward to when I get over there next.
But you know,
I want to get. So I wanted to clear something. So John, I had an interview with Chris Sutton somewhat recently, and he made a comment about some 80s Sparks releases not the people in the UK not even having awareness of them, but you pushed back against that. Does that sound familiar?
Yeah, basically, I think people knew about some of the albums. Pulling Rabbits is the one that clearly people didn't know about. I met people during the 90s and the revival, and then later on during the 21s, and they'd never heard of Pulling Rabbits. They'd heard of the others, but I think, to be fair, if you were in the Sparks fan club, I mean, I wasn't, you know, you'd have got knowledge of whatever was coming out, and there was still a lot of UK people who were keen.
Yeah. So just to give a few things out of the way, to give some stats about the album in question here. It was released in June 1984. It did not chart anywhere. It was not, as we just discussed, released in the UK until an eventual re-release by Repertoire Records in April of 2021. So it took a good, what is that, 37 years, 27 years? I can't do the math any longer. Probably, I think 37. Yeah, on yellow vinyl. This was produced, and I will want to talk about this a little bit. It was produced apparently by Ian Little. Now, Ian
Yeah.
Little was not a name that I knew before until I read about his bona fides, and he was the producer. Let me start off with this. He was an engineer for Avalon, the final Roxy music album, which I'm a massive fan of. But then he was also the producer of the third Duran album, Seven and
That's
the Ragged
correct.
Tiger. And apparently Ron and Russell sought Ian out specifically because they loved the sound of Seven and the Ragged Tiger so much that they wanted that to be recreated. Does that sound
Yeah,
familiar?
Ian Little gave Duran their first #1 with "Is There Something I Should Know," which isn't on
Right.
that album, which is the reason why he got the gig. He was also engineer and producer with Orchestral Manoeuvres Dazzle Ships, which wasn't a popular album here, probably one of the least popular, but now very popular. People have gone back
Yeah.
to it, but at the time it was a bit of one of those experimental albums that they risked. They tried to be Kraftwerk doing Radioactivity, and it didn't work. He got famous for doing that because he did a lot of the classic engineering. He was also he worked on the studio that which is how he got the gig as an engineer for that album, Avalon. He worked in Phil Manzanera's studio, which is where it was recorded.
Interesting.
It's so great to have John on this episode because you're such a technical guy, and this album is so technically idiosyncratic that I don't want to get ahead of your agenda, Christian, but I really, really want to hear what John has to say about some of the production here.
Well, I think the production for this album is really key to what this album is, and it's interesting to me that Ian Little, that that Ron and Russ loved the sound of that album, loved the sound of "Is There Something I Should Know" and the Reflex, and also, as a sort of an aside, interesting that album was not, as to my understanding, I was too young to know at the time, but to my understanding, was not really that well received by that Duran album was not that well received at the time critically. I Is that your understanding?
In England, it was really popular because they had three hits off of it. Aside of "Is There Something I Should Know," because they had Union of the Snake,
New Moon on Monday.
Moon on Monday.
Yeah, I mean, it was huge.
And Wild Boys. They were all three really top 5 hits.
Yeah.
It was a very solid album. It put them, right up there, and internationally, definitely in Europe, that's for sure. And I think it did in the States. They got a good reputation from that, and then from then onwards. The only thing that I would sort of question was not picking up on this, Christian, but the hit that you mentioned there, what was it?
Reflex?
Yeah, that was a remix done by Nile Rodgers.
Nile Rodgers.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
I'm not sure
whether
the Maels were pushed on a different plane there and picked up Ian Little purely because of the album more than anything, I suppose.
So I guess the sort of negative, I wouldn't say negative connotation, but just some of the mixed reviews I read from that album. A lot of it came from critics at the time, because critics are going to be critics, especially the American ones. But also that Ian Little himself had recently wrote a book, and he talked about how difficult that time was making that album, and how Duran were checked out. All the members were checked out in various ways, addicted to cocaine or just uninspired and tired. That's where the ragged tiger came in. So for the people involved, it wasn't really a fun process. Yet, what came out of that really attracted Ron and Russell, and they sought out this guy that, for whom Duran, thought wasn't a great time. I don't know how they feel now, but for Ron and Russell, thought this is who we want. This is who's going to get us there.
Did he say anything in his book about recording with Sparks, or is that's just now?
I have not found anything.
One quick,
unfortunately.
Yeah, I know he went off the rails while he was out there, actually. Whether that was anything to do with recording the album in LA at the time or later on, but I know his addiction to drugs and alcohol started while he was in the States.
Yeah. So regardless, so Ron and Russell were interested in that sound, and who wouldn't be? It's a banger of an album, I think. At least half those songs are incredible. So but particularly what it was that they wanted that was in the production of that album was this magical instrument, the CMI Fairlight.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to be talking about that a lot because then, and I know you're very familiar, because this, I mean, if you talk about 1983, 84, 85, thereabouts, it was absolutely ubiquitous. And it was, I'm not sure how far into the weeds I want to get with the technical aspects, but it was the first time really you had a reliable sampler that gave you pretty decent samples, and the second version of the Fairlight actually gave you a visual tracking software. So the type of thing that we take for granted now started right there, where you've got the one track here going left to right. There's the drum, there's the tom track, there's the bass track, and all of that, if I'm not mistaken, pretty much started with the CMI Fairlight.
Once Russell had his own recording studio and had that built, then yeah, they're working together on, without a producer, obviously, from the experience that they had with Ian Little, and not wanting to carry on having somebody else get involved and perhaps influence in a way that they didn't want. They could do that whole thing on their own, and that's where music you can dance to came from.
Is it your impression that, I'm sorry, Christian.
No, go on.
Is it, you said that based on that experience with Ian Little, is it your impression that it was not a positive experience?
No, I don't think it was that. I don't think there's anything. It's like if you read, was it Darryl Isley's book there, right? He's not really fond of the 80s, the 80s Sparks. So his version of how things progressed and how they moved along is not that great. And he doesn't have a very good opinion of Pulling Rabbits, but he does say that Ian Little was influential on them in producing the album, and then perhaps he was too much influential. Now, I don't know whether that's right or wrong, but going by the fact that the album is very, very heavily you have the sequencer on it. And clearly, from what Christian's saying, the Fairlight was predominant in many ways. Then, yeah, perhaps they just wanted to do it their own way and wanted the time to do it. And of course, they were fed up with record labels by that time trying to influence them to do things their way, make the music this way. Hence the music you can dance to.
I would agree with all of that. And he was their last producer.
Oh, is that
Yeah,
right?
I mean, they worked with a few. I mean, they worked with Tony Visconti on the plagiarism.
Well, here and
later
there,
on,
and FFS,
but it was here.
I mean,
yeah, it was dips in and dips out.
Right. Yeah, that's interesting. So, according to our good friend Rude Swart, from his albums project, he's a little vague on this, but he does kind of point toward the idea that they started working with Ian Little, but weren't thrilled with the process and gave up on him at some point and took over the reins themselves. I haven't found anything, more
I hadn't heard that.
definite than that.
Yeah.
Now, if you read Esley's book, Talent is an Asset, he has a comment by David Kendrick, the drummer, who basically said he didn't feel that this album, that they were really into this album, that they clearly had a proper vision of how the album would come out. And maybe that's because Mr. Little was too influential on it. And
Yeah.
I don't say they gave up on it, but because to me, it sounds like they produced a really good synth pop album.
Yeah.
Whether this was what they intended to do, whether the songs came out in the way that they intended to do is a different matter. But from what Kendrick says, it didn't feel like it was them doing it as they had done in the previous three albums. And bearing in mind that this, I think, was the last album that the band played on.
I think
so
listed in the credits on Music That You Can Dance To. I might be wrong about that, but I think they are. But they're still the live band. So
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're and they were there in that 1984 American Bandstand appearance with Dick Clark and all that. But
what was the impression of you two guys of the band's role on that? Because I know David Kendrick has said that they were basically non-existent on that album. They came in here and there.
Is that what David said? Because I would believe that if that's what he said.
He said by that point, yeah.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Because from what he stated in the book, his comment was that it didn't feel like the other three albums. It didn't feel like they were a band, and therefore probably a lot of what was being done was processed, sequenced, backing tracks that were created perhaps by Ian Little, using Fairlight, using whatever was available, rather than a live drummer or a live bass guitar or a live guitar. There were, according to this, that there were definitely on the album in different ways. Bob Haig was Roland guitar synthesizer, so definitely got to use some electronics on it. However, perhaps not as much as they previously had done. In terms
What's
of
interesting, as we get into the songs soon, hopefully, there are instances where you can hear Bob Hogg. Is it Haig or Hogg? I should know by now. That you can hear Bob's guitar, but it sounds awfully processed, and it's far back in the mix. It basically sounds like someone's pressed a key and made a guitar chord, which is, in keeping with sort of the style of this album.
Yeah, I'm really annoyed with myself because I went to the recent chat at the chapel in London with Rob Brydon, the comedian that Ron and Russell did, and they were asking the audience to do questions, and I went to stand up to do exactly that, ask this question about that album and Ian Little's production, and some bloke got right up in front of me and beat me to it, so I didn't get to ask the question. But yes, I think I would love to know if they learnt much off of working with Little because of his engineering and production techniques. So perhaps that was what's helped them move directly onto doing their own album. Yeah, I mean, the 80s for us in the UK was if you kept up with the band, if you bought the albums, then it wasn't a surprise that this came about. And where they went with the next two albums after that, it's more of a surprise to me that I met people later on who were Sparks fans from 74, perhaps up to 79, who then bought Terminal Jive, thought things had gone wrong. Sparks never came back again, never toured, just forgot about them. And these albums, particularly, the three like Womp, Angst, and Outer Space, that they are great albums, and yet people didn't know about them or anything. I mean, Pulling Rabbits was way off the radar. There were people I'd met who'd never heard of it. And I'd said, I went to one of the 21 nights, and that was Pulling Rabbits. And I said, what album's that? What? You didn't know about that album?
See, those are the shows I would have loved to have seen. I mean, obviously, I loved seeing the 5 that I did at the beginning, but I would have loved to have seen something like Pulling Rabbits or Big Beat or something like that, which, because I remember reading that they were just great. They were great nights.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I made my friend go to the Pulling Rabbits. This is the guy who lent me all the first albums that I never had. And I made him go to Pulling Rabbits because he insisted I take him to Number One in Heaven. And I didn't want to go to Number One in Heaven because there's only 6 songs. I wanted to hear a bit more than that. I wanted a bit of
but that's like a
quality for
rave.
money.
I mean, Number One in Heaven done correctly is a rave.
Well, you know what? It's like my brother, and this is true. He doesn't like one-man shows because he feels like he's not getting his money's worth.
Fair enough.
But I would love to see Number One in Heaven in its completion. That would be a dream. But,
same.
But I understand what you're saying.
You can't argue that they were more inspired during the recording of that album than they were in this album. I think is fair to say. The other two things were.
You can't just throw these things out and not let us engage. I mean, because
John
and I are engagers.
Okay.
But actually, I don't really have anything to say. No.
You just wanted me to remember you're here.
No. It's great because it always comes back in my mind. When did they really realize that they wanted to be just Ron and Russell? And we know it kind of we know it was a process that kind of culminated with, or not culminated, but established itself with Little Beethoven.
Yeah,
but there was a process of getting there, and how early on did they know? And I think that's it might have been right about now that they really said, the band thing is so much fun, and we love these guys, but we really want to start making that move.
I agree. I think it's right about here, or maybe in Outer Space, where they realized they could do it.
Yeah.
Without anybody outside.
Yeah.
With Number One in Heaven, of course, they thought, well, gee, if only we had this gear and maybe this guy, we could do it all.
Well, he's listed as a collaborator on the album. Moroder.
Giorgio? Yeah. Oh,
yeah.
Yeah. For sure.
Yeah.
But
then you had the same thing with Terminal Jive. I mean, you had Keith Forsey and Axel Faltermeyer both assisted in writing the songs on that. And there's this strange story that Ron didn't play on any of it, which is, I don't know, I can't see that's the truth.
I don't think that's right.
I don't believe that. But Christian and I have talked about this a lot, that he had submitted close to 24 songs, and they were pretty much all rejected.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And actually, to come back to this album, though, Christian, you wonder if Ian Little had a demo beforehand of what they were recording.
Great
Whether
question.
he'd heard,
or if they just
what they
grabbed him off the street,
Yeah.
And you know,
whether he heard something beforehand and knew, well, this is really what I need to do with you guys, and this is how it should be done. Here's this wonderful new piece of kit that you can use, and
yeah,
perhaps he showed them how to use it, and that's
yeah,
maybe where Russell got interested in the engineering side of it, because now, I mean, this man is now their main engineer, isn't he, and mixer.
I have a quote from Russell. Da, 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 da. I'm reading this before I know if it's actually pertinent. From Russell, we are often listed as being co-authors, when in fact Ron writes the bulk of the material. On the new album, I wrote the lyrics to Pretending to Be Drunk and Love Stories. Apart from that, Ron did everything else. My capacity is as an editor. I get rid of the excess or make an arrangement better. So who
Yeah,
knows? That could have
yeah.
been around that
Oh,
time.
so finally we
Right?
know what Russell's contribution to the band is.
Right now we know. Not just a pretty face.
Not just
Um,
yeah.
yeah, so who knows? Don't know. The other two quick things I wanted to bring up was because you know, I talk a lot about the overlap between Sparks and other contemporary bands. And one of those is Devo for obvious reasons.
Oh,
You know, you got David
yes.
Kendrick, right? So I think you know where
Yes.
I'm going to go here.
Yeah.
If you're a Devo fan, because
Yep.
this very same year, they, you know, after a streak of genius, they release an album called Shout,
Shout.
which is 100% on a CMI Fairlight, and it's got so I mean, I have to admit, I do enjoy listening to a lot of it, but it's got the lifeblood kind of drained out of it, and there's sort of that same thing that I get from this album, and like there's something there, but you're losing a lot of humanity.
Yeah. I love Shout. I think it's a really, really good album. But I think you're right in that um, they're basically disappearing from being the experimental band that they were to start off with. They would take risks on each album with something or other. One song or two
Right.
would be something that would be unusual and a bit. But that album was so mainstream. Nothing wrong with it. I think it's a really good album. It
Ironically,
has
because
some
it
really
didn't
good
chart
points.
anywhere.
Oh God, yeah. But it was pretty much mainstream.
But we're
Yeah.
talking about pulling rabbits. We're not talking about shout.
Actually,
No,
it's Shout.
well,
Okay.
Devo Shout, yeah,
They're contemporaneous.
yeah.
Um, any hoodly. I'd probably have a third point, but I think that can wait. um,
But
or a
but
two and a
but
half, or
just
whatever it was.
on that point, do you guys think that that could be an apt description of this album to some degree?
Yeah, I do.
Yes, yeah, and I think that'll come out when we start talking about each song because it's quite clear this is pretty much aimed at the radio market,
Yeah.
Yeah.
at radio play. It definitely has that feel.
Yeah. So I just want to get one opinion of this album out right now, and I felt similarly to in outer space when they go for dance, when they go for a dance track, they do it pretty fucking well, actually.
Well, if you've heard the dance mixes of four of the other tracks,
And I have, and they're
then
amazing.
yeah, then you know that they're actually pretty good. Pretending to
Yeah.
be drunk is probably the most typically 80s dance track, but the versions that they did of Progress definitely. Um, the what was the Sparks in the Dark? Yeah, the Sparks in the Dark had a part three, doesn't it? As a long mix. So
Oh,
part one, part two, there is the full
oh,
version of that,
okay.
which was on a B-side on a 12-inch single.
I know that they
Actually,
released.
yeah,
No,
go on.
sorry.
Sorry.
Well, I know that at some point they released a collection of 7-inch remixes and 7-inch, 12-inch. I'm not really sure which, but they released some remixes, and those songs you're talking about were on there. And I think it
Yeah,
really showed the elements of those songs that, made them cool and listenable and whatever.
yeah. It was With All My Might, Pretending to Be Drunk,
Hmm.
Kiss Me Quick,
Yeah, Kiss Me Quick.
Sparks in the Dark, and we're all 12-inch remixes, extended
Yeah.
mixes.
And the release I'm thinking about had change at the end also,
Ah,
which
okay.
was, um, but there it is. Do you mind if I go ahead and just get into just sort of just hit these bullet points as to what who is involved, and then we'll just get into the album as it were.
Yep, go for
Um,
it.
it was released in June 1984. I think I may have said that already. Did
Hmm.
not chart anywhere, of course. I think I said the thing about it not being released in the UK until 2021. It was released in Portugal and Argentina for some reason. Uh, I
Isn't it
said the
weird how that
producer.
happens with these albums?
It does make me wonder. It was
Somebody could
engineered.
explain it, I'm sure.
I know. Well, that's why if we had Ruud Swart just over here in the corner of the room, the sleeve design was done by Larry Vigon, who's a familiar name, but he didn't actually create that painting. That painting there was done by a guy named Stan Watts. Ron is listed on synth, Russell vocals, David Kendrick is listed on on drums, Bob Hogg on guitar, and Leslie Boehm on bass, and John Thomas, who is a new name, who is listed on additional keyboards, who took the place of another John whom I've interviewed, and I feel bad for not remembering his last name
Goodwin?
now.
Was it Goodwin?
Yes, thank you. Yes, it was. Yeah, it was a good one. Let's see, and I think that's all I've got right there. Before the recording of the album, or the run-up, I should say, in early 1984, Ron and Russell took a holiday to Japan, which they mainly spent doing some sightseeing and shopping. They were featured on a Japanese television show in Yokohama on a program called Funky Tomato. They were live, very Japanese. They were live in the studio to introduce the video of All You Ever Think About Is Sex. So they're still promoting the previous album. But they were there to try to make some relationships with some radio stations and some TV stations where they might be able to come back and promote the next album. And that, of course, didn't happen. They did very little. I'll just throw this out there. They did very little touring. They didn't do a whole lot of live performances during that time. I've got a whole list of them here, and I think they were like 99% in California. A couple of interesting ones in that uh, they were opened by the Red Hot Chili Peppers in
Right.
one, and I think they opened for, or were the opening act for Psychedelic Furs. But beyond that, they did not perform live very much. They had a now well known to Sparks fans appearance once again on Dick Clark's American Bandstand.
Bandstand, yeah.
Having said all that, should we get into the songs at hand?
Let's go for it.
Let's do it.
All right, here we are. Well, the opening number is Pulling Rabbits Out of the Hat, the title of the album. I just had a few notes here to myself. Angst in My Pants, Part 2. I thought maybe it sounded a little similar.
Yeah.
Don't see it. Russ gives a similar vocal delivery to that song, I thought. It's another one of Ron's lyrics about not, and I do think this is lyrically one of the best songs on the album. And to me, it betrays, Ron's feelings about just not being taken seriously as an artist. And I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. But orally, there are some really cool synth sounds that are patches, straight from the CMI Fairlight, like those bell sound. Oh, most importantly, what it starts off with. Shing, 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 shing. Those orchestra hits.
Yeah.
I have a story, brief, about those orchestra hits. Most of the orchestra hit samples are all from a 1968 record from Stravinsky, whom Sparks wrote a song about.
They refer to him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So are
There
we
you go.
saying
The more you know.
we're saying it's sampled, yeah?
It was definitely sampled. Okay.
Cheeky. Cheeky.
Cheeky. But the song, what do you guys think of the song?
Well, it's good. It's good. It's a good starter, and I think you're right. It's in the same ballpark as Angst in My Pants. Definitely as a title track, kicking it all off. Should have been a single.
I agree.
But hey, it wasn't.
It wasn't a single?
No.
No, it wasn't. It was not a single. They did do another version for plagiarism.
Plagiarism. Yeah.
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 No, they didn't make it a
and
single.
lots of people say that's a better version as well.
I'm not one of those people.
And nor am I.
Yeah.
Yeah, me either, I think.
Yeah.
But
I mean,
it's a great way to introduce what they're doing sonically,
Yeah.
for sure. And it does kind of start off, if you read the lyrics like I do, on an almost bitter note. Like,
I think actually, Christian. This is excellent because I never looked at it that way. I looked at it as something about a guy trying to impress his other half, his lady, his female friend, whatever, and doing everything he can and failing. But actually, the way you put it, and here we can do a Mr. Barrett deep dive on it, if you like.
I was going to say this could be
another Ron Mael. I'm a failure song, and yet you should look at me as a genius. And I think you're right. I think you're right.
But that's the amazing thing about Sparks is that I always appreciate it just for the level of the lyrics as they're written, because it's a beautiful, incredible set of lyrics. But then you always go down lower and lower. You can go so many interpretations, and I think what you say, Christian, is a perfectly valid interpretation.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah. I'll give you my thoughts on it. I think it's one of their best songs. I think it really set the tone for this album, or at least it should have. And I would have loved to have heard a full album of pop songs this powerful. I think there are a couple on this album that do meet that standard, but this song in particular, I think would have fit great on their most current tour. It would have been perfect for that tour. And I think it's a great accomplishment. I think it's really one of their enduring tracks.
Yeah, it is good. It is good.
I'll add one other thought just before we get into this, and that unlike other albums, which I tend to hear as a whole, like any of them, with this one, there's certain songs I think are amazing and great, and certain songs that just fall flat for me. And I've tried to reconcile that, but I just haven't been able to over the years. It's just remained that way. So there are some songs like this I'm going to be completely enthusiastic about, and then some I'm going to say it doesn't work for me. It's not like
that's fair. That's fair enough. I love this album, but I'm not going to say as I normally would for many albums. But for Sparks, for me, there are a couple of their albums that are definitely what I call all killer, no filler, and that's Angst for sure and Propaganda. This isn't an all killer, no filler. It has one or two I think are slightly weaker than the others on the album, but
it's a little bit
I will admit I've played this again and again the last few days just to get familiarised myself with it again. And the two that I fall down on, I'm actually beginning to like more. So yeah, I don't know. It's perhaps
All
not an
right.
all killer, no filler.
John, I've tried. There's the 3 or 4 albums that I never thought as much of. I tried over the last couple of years to listen to and see if my opinion changed. On some they did. On Balls, I think more highly of that album now than I used to. Terminal Jive, I don't. Introducing, I know, is a popular one, but for me, it's just doesn't hold together as a song. And this is the other one. This and Interior Design still hasn't moved forward. But this one has moved up a little bit. This one has moved up. I'm sorry to hear it.
I think this is a better version of Terminal Jive in a lot of ways.
Well, what isn't?
I think it's like Terminal Jive in some ways, and that I haven't really quite plumbed the depths of my soul to figure out why. But it just seems a little more honest, honest in terms of the songwriting.
So do you want you're going to go through the lyrics then, Christian?
Yeah, let's do it.
Go for it.
And also, I
Get the ball
know this
rolling.
is it's a minor key song, and there's not a lot of those on this. I'll grab the sun and the moon. I'll hold the world in my hands. These things are easy for me. I plan to make you understand. Pulling rabbits out of a hat, pulling rabbits out of a hat. All I get is polite applause. Applause, 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 applause. And I do like that he doesn't deviate. He just says it over and over. Marvel at heaven and hell, gasp at the Champs-Élysées. Am I saying that right?
Champs-Élysées.
Champs-Élysées.
Yeah.
Will you say it for me again?
Champs-Élysées.
Champs-Élysées. Thank you. Raise the Titanic, and then I see you turning away. Pulling rabbits out of a hat, pulling rabbits out of a hat. All I get is polite applause. Applause, 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 applause. Entertaining. That's the word I get from you. Entertaining, and then you bid a fond adieu. Well, adieu. Instrumental. I'll make a pauper a king. I'll turn your water to wine. These things are easy for me. How come I can't change your mind? And that's the chorus again. Pulling rabbits out of a hat. Applause, applause. Pulling rabbits out of a hat. Again, again, again. Fade out. Good song. We like it. Dramatic. Good stuff.
Hearing you read the lyrics just gets me thinking about Ron's approach to lyrics, because sometimes it's these, deeply, very, what's the word I'm looking for? They're very compressed, a lot of lyrics into a small space, and bringing out all these concepts that he has coming into his mind. And sometimes they're just very straightforward like this.
It's just one thing that he's hitting.
It's just one thing,
over and
but
over.
it's a work of poetry, in some ways.
Yeah. I like, and he makes it clear, like, there's nothing more to say than this. I'm saying this, I'm saying this, I'm saying that. Yeah. All right. And then track 2, we have love scenes. Different thing here. Anybody have anything they want to say about love scenes?
Yeah, another great song. Captures the spirit, I think, of the 80s in the sort of soundtracks that you had at the time and the films that were going around. Anything that was, over dramatic and that. And that's definitely Ron putting it down here, I think, from the point of view. And also love scenes. He seems to be always talking about films and cinema. I mean, many of his lyrics are in that, aren't they? When he bangs on about all sorts of things like I don't know, frankly, Scarlet, I don't give a damn. There's that, and he has a thing about Gone with the Wind, doesn't he? The song Gone with the Wind, one of the best songs I think Sparks have had as a cast off.
He likes Clark Gable.
Yeah,
all the way down to the mustache.
Exactly. Yeah. Which by the way, this is when he changed his mustache.
Yes.
At this point in their career, to the sort of Ronald Coleman or maybe Clark Gable.
Clark Gable, yeah.
So the notes that I had about this, nothing terribly interesting. I was wondering if you listen, there's like this, could be a guitar lead doing single notes, or it could be a synth. It's kind of hard to say. It's kind of where one of those points where, is there a guitar, is there not? And just another example of how the guitar gets sort of pushed to the back. And I also noticed from this song and many others that very often the bass line is so simple. It's often just note, 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 note.
Yeah.
Change chorus and change key, note, note, note. Let's see. We've got some hand claps on the 2 and the 4 during the chorus. Gives a little bit of punch. You could tell this was something that was probably made mostly on the Fairlight, mostly sequenced. And but I think it's cool. Not one of
You froze up, or is it me?
you said.
No, I'm here. You back on?
Or maybe you.
Yep, you just froze there.
But I could see this working as part of a soundtrack, which they did many of at this time.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
And you've highlighted that with your piece about some of the songs that were on different various soundtracks and that
I tried to get them all out of the mid-80s.
Yeah.
Until we get to the good stuff like in it.
So do you want me to do this one?
Oh yeah, please.
Okay. Right, love scenes. Take it from the top. I hate to see the end. It doesn't matter about the plot. Wish it weren't pretend. Once we've done the scene, and if it ain't quite right, we should use the method, girl, and practice through the night. Now we do the look. Now we do the touch. Now we do the long embrace, and soon the real good stuff. Love scenes. I know that the 2 of us could play. Love scenes. I know that you like it and you'll say, with you and me, it's love scenes. I think I know the part. My motivation's fine. You'd be the director and let's turn this into art. Once again, the look. Once again, the touch. Once again, the long embrace. And now the real good stuff. Love scenes, I just want to play them all the time. Love scenes, why don't you join me anytime? Love scenes, I know that the two of us could play. Love scenes, I know that you'd like it and you'll say, with you and me, it's love scenes.
From the top, I hate to see the end. It doesn't matter about the plots. I wish it weren't pretend. Once we've done the scene, and if it ain't quite right, we should use the method, girl, and practice through the night. Now we do the look, now we do the touch, now we do the long embrace, and soon the real good stuff. Love scenes, I know that the two of us could play. Love scenes, I know that you like it and you say. Let's turn this into art. Once again the love, once again the touch, once again the long.
We're on the movie buff. The romantic movie buff. Did anyone have anything else to say about, before moving on to pretending to be drunk?
Nope.
Well, I'll
All
just
right,
ask
then.
this. I'll just ask this. Is John here as our vaunted and respected guest, or is he one of the guys? Because that will affect my answer to this question about this song.
Oh,
I mean, if you have to ask me, John's one of the guys.
If he's one of the guys, I'll tell
He's
you.
a mate.
If he's our vaunted guest, I'll say this isn't my cup of tea, this song.
okay.
But if he's one of the guys, I'll say I think it's one of their truly low moments in their entire catalog.
Oh, this is very low on the totem pole for you.
Oh my gosh. I cannot listen to this song from beginning to end. I can't.
All right. This is what we're here for.
Okay.
Yeah,
All
I love
right.
this.
Well, I don't
No,
want
I'm
to.
serious. We're doing the whole discography. This is the whole point. I mean, they're not all tens. They're not all sevens. They're not all fours.
But as I've gotten older, I've learned it's all about personal taste. It's not about if John thinks it's a 10, that's fantastic. But for me, this song, I just can't even listen to it.
Woo. Okay. Well,
No personality. What's he singing about? Anybody could be singing about this stuff. There, I said it. Sorry, John.
Well, I'm going to accept that from you and not, and I won't give you shit for it.
Go ahead. I don't care.
And I, that's kind of why I said the thing about what I said about this being part of a movie soundtrack.
Yeah.
Is because like a lot of the songs they did in film soundtracks of that time. I mean, it's lyrically vapid.
There are two other love songs on here, With All My Might and a Song That Sings Itself, that are fantastic.
Sure. Yeah.
There's so much personality in them, especially, but I don't want to get ahead, but that's just my personal take.
There you go. I love this.
That's okay. Just invite me on.
You gotta have conflict. This is what gets us.
Okay. I'll just. What were you gonna? What were you saying there, John?
I said, I hope you guys invite me on for little Beethoven. My God, you're gonna get some trash talk.
Man.
Oh, you mean one of their all-time greatest albums?
Well, I better speed things along or skip ahead.
Yes, please do.
It's so much fun, though.
Well, then, okay, so next we've got Pretending to Be Drunk, I will say is a highlight of the album. I find that lyrically, it is the closest thing to classic Ron Mael lyrics you're going to get on this record. You do hear the band more audibly than usual here, the rest of the Bates Motel guys. There's some good slap bass by Les Bowen. I will admit there's kind of a synthetic quality to the production that kind of doesn't quite work for me because this would be better as a rock song.
Yeah, it's certainly. I like the fact that Ronnie's talking about being continental, and that I think he must have caught from being in the UK, because I'm sure. And the idea that obviously all us continentals, us European stroke UK but guys basically get drunk a lot.
Now I am so continental, they think that is nice.
Yeah, saying that he's in the lyrically, he's basically saying, now I am so continental, they think it's nice. So it's like, hey, those British people, they come over here, start drinking heavily and get themselves completely smashed, you know. It definitely had a 12-inch mix, but I don't think it went very far as I can tell. Yes, it was. It made number 100 on the dance chart.
On the dance chart where? In the US?
US dance chart.
I mean 100 in the dance chart?
Yeah.
Well, there you go.
Obviously, it could only have been one of the 12-inch mix, I think, that probably did it.
Okay, well, those 12-inch mixes are a lot better. Okay.
Well, there are 3 different mixes on this album, and you wonder whether any of those people actually did the remixing, because it's not stated who did those extended versions.
I see.
But it's possible that, you know, one of them did it. Or Ian Little. Well, as I say, the dance mix of this, or the extended mix, works from the point of view of typically 80s dance songs from a synth pop band, you know, that sort of thing. Not dance music per se, but a track made into a dance track, let's say.
Gotcha. Yeah, I don't know what kind of club I think this would really play well at.
That is what I had intended, pretending to be drunk. A little change in character, I'm pretending to be drunk. You think I am weak and feeble, you think I'm a bore. When you drag me to a party, soon I'm out the door. Next time I'll portray a suave, sophisticated hunk. That is what I had intended, pretending to be drunk. That is what I had intended, pretending to be drunk. A bit of I have lived and loved, I'm pretending to be drunk. You say I could use some swagger, you say toughen up. I am rigid as a board, you tell me loosen up. I'm so loose and I'm so tough that I can barely move. That is what I had intended.
Join Christian and his mates next time for the thrilling conclusion of Pulling Rabbits Out of a Hat. I'm Computer Girl from the song Computer Girl saying, watch where you're sticking that light pen. Bye now.